Witty little comment. You're welcome. I was trying to think of a random way to start this. Are you ready for it now?
I'm not.
Okay, good. That means I did my job. This is the Bowls of Life podcast. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Virginia. As we've gone through life, we've learned something important.
Life is messy. It gets complicated.
But we've also learned that we can create tools to help us jump into the mess of life and make an adventure of it.
Welcome to our messy adventures of faith, family, and food. You do know the reference, right? The Woody little comment reference?
No.
Oh, come on. That's Dwight from The Office.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so what was
the witty little comment?
and what was happening in that moment?
I don't remember what was happening.
There was an episode, or much of part of the, what was it? Cold opener, I guess, part of that episode. Jim came in dressed as Dwight and acted like Dwight. So the very ending of the episode was Dwight coming in attempting to be Jim.
Yeah. Witty little comment.
Yeah, that was the best he could do. He didn't actually make comments that sounded like Jim. He could just, say witty little comment.
I love that show.
Yep. I've been reliving it through one of the podcasts I'm listening to.
Yeah.
Book podcast. They make a lot of Office references, and I love every time they do.
Yeah.
It feels good in my soul.
Yeah.
It's a fun show.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all I got.
Oh, well, maybe there's somebody out there listening that's like, I get to relive The Office because we reference it.
Yeah.
Or because we did.
We did just then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you're welcome.
You're welcome. You want to know something funny from our lives?
Yeah.
Okay. On the last episode, the 50th episode, we talked about potentially changing platforms at some point in the future, and instead of changing podcasting platforms at some point in the future, like after this whole series was over, I just went ahead and did it like 2 days later.
Yeah, and the podcast episode that came out this week was the one where you shared how we did this whole 45 minutes of a recording and lost it.
Yes.
Well, you have another thing you can share about how you almost lost our podcast.
Oh gosh, I did almost sort of lose our podcast. Yeah, we changed podcasting platforms, and so to save all the terms and things, basically we changed over to another podcasting platform.
Yeah.
I did a bunch of things getting it all set up, and because I set it all up and brought us from a different place, and I scheduled out like 3 episodes in advance, all in like an hour and a half, 2-hour span, it triggered their spam filters, thinking I was some kind of bot who had grabbed hold of an old inactive podcast trying to just spam people with all kinds of stuff and make $1.
Into the weekend where we were doing a quick little camping trip, and we weren't sure if we were going to have our podcast by the following Monday.
Yeah, because they took it down, and while technically the podcast was still accessible, I had no access to be able to add any future episodes. Like that was done. We potentially had lost that entire feed. It was just going to sit there stagnant for the rest of forever.
Yep.
Thankfully, just an email and a chat and a few other little things like that.
We got it back.
Yeah, we got it back. So here we are.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, people didn't even know that it was down.
Nobody knew.
Back up by Monday.
Yeah, another one of those moments where it was like, oh no.
Yeah.
We're figuring this thing out.
Oh, goodness, yes. I'm glad it got back up as quickly as it did. I was very appreciative of that. I literally said, as we pulled into the place we were camping, and I looked at my phone for the umpteenth millionth time that day, hoping for a response. I had the response email, and I looked at you and I said, oh, good, because I was not going to be able to unplug from this thing for the rest of the weekend until I got that response. I was just going to check my email every 30 minutes. So
that's funny.
Yeah. I was stressed out just a little bit. Not a lot, but a little.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What tea are you drinking tonight?
What tea am I drinking tonight? It's an herbal tea. Mm-hmm. It's sweet cinnamon spice.
That's one of your faves.
Well, it's nighttime, and so, try not to intake a bunch of caffeine, but anything with spice is, extra nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sugar, spice, everything nice.
Yeah. I'm drinking... What am I drinking? The vanilla, blueberry.
Nope. Is it got vanilla
chamomile?
in it? It's just like blueberry chamomile. I don't think it has vanilla.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
I'll check it. Yeah. But yeah.
I think it's your blueberry chamomile. But yeah, it's a good one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't put you to sleep. Apparently you feel like chamomile affects you a lot.
Yeah.
And it's like a sleep tea technically.
Oh, I'm already sleepy, so
yeah, that's
it doesn't
true.
matter.
That's true.
Luckily, it's not even 9 o'clock yet.
I know. We're started really early. That's probably why we've got the extra banter energy right now.
Yeah, we've gotten better at bedtimes here lately. I think earlier. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, earlier.
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah, I was talking to a homeschool mom about this today, but yeah, not napping, Luna not napping at all, but getting in bed earlier is helpful.
Yeah.
So if you're out there and you have a 5-year-old who's tired as all get out, but still going to bed kind of late, just move their bedtime up. Because they don't need a nap.
Yeah.
Because then they'll ruin bedtime. But they still need a lot of sleep.
Yeah.
So they need to go to bed earlier.
It's true. We all need lots of sleep.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Anyways.
No, sleep. Did you know that until modern history, we used to sleep like 10 to 12 hours as people?
Yeah.
Like 10 hours was a pretty regular amount of sleep.
Yes, I miss that. I mean, I wish we had that.
You miss it for the days that you remember before electricity?
I'm sorry, I'm so tired.
Yes, you're so tired. You think you lived in Little House on the Prairie just because you've been watching it recently? Get out.
No, I meant to say I wish we had that.
Yeah. There's actually other research that suggests that people would literally wake up in the middle of the night and do things around the house and like journal and stuff and then go back to sleep because, it was just dark and they would just light the one candle.
Yeah.
But yeah, because they slept for so long and you just got bored or all your intrusive thoughts. I don't know if they had intrusive thoughts, but we do.
Oh, for
all
sure
the anxieties.
They did.
Yeah, I know I'm being a little facetious, but yeah, their intrusive thoughts would wake them up in the middle of the night. And so they're like, well, I guess I'll light my candle and write in my journal.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that how nice, because they were. You've talked about this. I don't remember if it was on the podcast. I think it was. Who knows?
Just go. Don't worry.
But yeah, talking about how when we started having light bulbs and stuff, we started waking up earlier. I mean, obviously there was candle, right? But we started sleeping less because we weren't sleeping based on nighttime.
Yeah.
Going to bed at dark and waking up when the sun came up. That would be significantly now. Depending on where you're living.
Yes.
Some places it's only 4 hours.
Right. There's reasons why people were choosing not to live in places like Sweden and Alaska for many years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Till the more recent times.
Yeah, they would be trying to figure out how to cover up their windows and stuff. They probably didn't have windows. No, they probably did. Yeah. Anyways.
What are we talking about today?
Play.
We're talking about playing. Kind of like the intro of this whole podcast. There's been a bunch of playful nonsense. Yes.
Yeah, I like this topic.
Yeah, the chapter immediately following work is a chapter on play. Because in Justin Whitmel's Early, I'm unconfident. I'm not confident.
Incompetent.
Oh. Incompetent. That's probably also accurate.
You butchered that.
Yes, Justin Whitmel Early.
Just say Justin. It's fine.
Well, he has a whole name. There's a lot of Justins out there.
Yeah.
Name 20 Justins, You probably can.
Okay, before we get too far into this, Kal-El. Our dog is a carpet licker.
Which is the weirdest thing to say.
And I had to stop him because he was about to do that literally the whole time.
Yeah. He'll pick it back up in a minute. It's
Probably
fine.
So. If you hear me ever snap, it's at a dog.
Absolutely it is. One of them snores, the other one licks the carpet and then breathes hard and pants all over the house. It's a whole deal.
Yeah.
Welcome to our lives.
So after work, now we're talking play. Justin Whitmel Early.
Because in the story of God, we were made for another world, a world of unfettered joy.
That sounds so wonderful.
Doesn't it? What do you think? What do you think about when you hear unfettered joy? What just comes to mind? What feelings, what images, what you got?
Honestly, doing what children do, but in an adult's body and mind, obviously, but just running around. I think kind of about the Garden of Eden a little bit. But just being able to run around outside and play and roll around in the dirt, not literally, but just
I like the sound at the end there. Ah,
Yeah,
like a Coke commercial.
Like you're not worried. You're not worried about time. Mm-hmm. You're not worried about any.
I don't know if I can imagine that. I'm always worried about what time it is.
I never know what time it is. You're not worried about like, not that you're not worried about work or whatever, but even that's joyful. Mm-hmm. Like even tilling the land is joyful. I don't know. I just that's what it sounds like to me, or feels like to me.
Yeah.
What about you?
Oh, what is unfettered joy?
Or what do you imagine when you hear that?
A lot of slow moving and book reading.
Oh.
Yeah. I know that's since we just vacationed, isn't quite the right word, but got away for a weekend. There's that part of me that's always like, especially on a family vacation with other people and all the things, it's like, okay, do things, move around, get the kids moving, do stuff, where my first instinct is to just like grab the book and find the quiet corner and sit down and be still.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, I love to just sit. Well, that's, if I sleep enough, I wouldn't be so worried about it. So, yeah. But I do like just sit and do nothing, but you can't do that when you have kids. You got to play.
Yeah.
You've got to play.
You got to play. Yeah. He talks about the fact that in Christianity, you're not going to get very far without a healthy imagination. And what he's referring to is literally if you read scripture, like from page 1, things are pretty out there. Like they're outside of our normal reality. Like there's this being who exists even though nothing exists. And then he just speaks and stuff starts happening and things grow at a rate that makes absolutely no sense. Like trees are popping up in seconds that take decades to grow. Mm-hmm. Animals just kind of pop up out of the ground. You were reading The Magician's Nephew, Chronicles of Narnia with Luna, and that was kind of the description of it, because they were literally just like the dirt was rising up and forming into animals.
Right.
And so he's doing stuff like that, but then later on he splits entire seas and the ground opens up to swallow people and then closes back whole. There's these crazy beings with multiple heads and faces, and also God comes to earth as a baby and lives an entire life and then dies and brings himself back to life. And then
we believe in angels and demons, and
and then in the end there's all kinds of crazy imagery happening that like every bit of it is really ridiculous on a what we experience every day kind of level.
Right.
Like none of it, at least for me personally, I can't say that I've ever run into anybody with multiple faces right there on their head.
Right.
Like, it does not happen. So we have to have a healthy imagination to be able to accept that what the Bible says is reality. Not because we're making stuff up, but just because it is outside of our natural experiences.
Right. And the more we talk about this, I think this will make more sense. But the way that he talks about how play and imagination is a part of our Christianity, because it takes that to believe the things that we read in the Bible. Mm-hmm. It makes me wonder about some people that choose not to believe in God anymore. If something happened in their childhood where they didn't get to play enough, or possibly like not every single one of them, but like I could see where that would contribute, because for some reason their imagination, their play, even their joy was taken from them. Mm-hmm. And that's why when they read the Bible or hear the stories from the Bible, they think, oh, absolutely not. I cannot believe that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that. Whether you could ever really track it back to literally play or just buzzword trauma, things like that,
right.
that remove our ability to believe in bigger things.
You think about like trauma, like kids who have to grow up too quickly because of their household situation, family situation. So, yes, I was equating it with that as well, like the trauma, the experiences that children have that are bad, that could lead to that.
Yeah. In Jesus's time on earth, he refers to children as the ones who will inherit the kingdom of God, and that we need a childlike faith. And it's likely because they're the ones humble enough to actually believe the ridiculous nature of what faith asks us to believe. And again, ridiculous in the sense that it's not what we encounter on a daily way. I don't actually think it's ridiculous. It's just that it could feel that way to us.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, it's nothing you've ever seen.
Yeah.
I think about that. This is what I love about AI. There's an Instagram that is like Bible pictures generated through AI, and it takes a description from the Bible and it generates it through AI, and then you're like, oh, that's what potentially an angel with a billion eyes, that is an eye that has a billion eyes, looks like. Very creepy. No wonder they had to say, "Do not be afraid."
Yes.
The beast in Revelation, they had
a
recent
they get wild.
one. Woo, crazy. I can't remember. It's like Bible AI, or I can't remember what the handle is, but
yeah,
it's wild, and I love to watch it because it's just like, if we really and that's just a depiction. That's still not even a full picture. So yeah, you gotta have a pretty wild imagination.
Yeah. Where our imagination comes in, play ultimately enables us to re-enchant a world that disenchants us, because most things in our world are pulling us away from imagination.
Yeah.
It's pulling us away from our ability to believe in outlandish kind of things.
Yeah. And our work and grind are so focused on work and getting more
accomplishment, more done.
Yeah, being more productive, that sort of thing. You lose out on play and rest, and I think that takes away from your joy and your imagination. Yeah.
Pause for our dogs. Again.
What's wrong?
Yeah, as we play, as we take the time to lean in with what our kids are doing and just imagine things that are different and things that aren't real, things that are silly and made up. In a lot of ways, we're rebelling against one of the greatest, if not the greatest lie our world, our age tries to tell us, and that's that God isn't real and that's all that there is. Because when we're imagining, when we're trying to re-enchant our world, we're saying there is more than what we can see. We're saying that something bigger than I can see in my everyday life is going on behind the scenes. And so,
enchantment is actually a really big, I think, backbone to certain homeschool methods.
Okay, tell me about it.
Because when we think about teaching a child in a classroom setting, you're teaching, there's a teacher, there's a group of kids, you're all kind of moving along, you're doing the same thing, you're just going with the flow because that's what the class is doing. But even back in the day, when schools weren't so focused on testing, and it was literally just a few kids in the school from the town, what really motivated learning was just enchantment with the world and the things around them. And so keeping enchantment alive in your children as you teach them, whether that's in a school setting or a homeschool setting, it's about letting your child let their imagination run wild, let them play, let them have fun, let them be bored and come up with things to do, but also they learn because they find something that they are interested in and want to know more about it. So they naturally start to learn about that thing. So yeah, thinking about like a child who wants to learn how to crochet. I don't know, that was the first thing that came to my mind, but
Because you want to crochet.
right, because they get really interested in how pretty it looks, and then how to do it. So they learn how to do it, and they watch videos or they go to classes and they learn how to do it, and they're really enchanted by that. But how do you enchant math? And so that's like obviously the question, but it's just finding ways to keep the imagination and the play and the enchantment alive so that your child and yourself never wants to stop learning. So does that make sense? I mean,
yeah, basically you're trying to make it fun and interesting in a way that, man, there's a world of possibility out there.
Yeah.
And that if you continue to make it fun, interesting, engaging, continue to show that there's a world of possibility, it fights against that. I just have to do this. I got to learn matrices in whatever it was, Algebra 2, that I learned how to do matrices in. How many times have I used that? Why do I remember that? Because one kid was being really cheeky and asked the teacher, when am I ever going to use this in life? He was trying to be a jerk. And she gave a few answers that she could think of that were not real answers.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, I just had to learn this to pass this test, and then you're not even going to ask me about it again for the rest of the school year.
Yeah.
And this isn't even a state tested area, so I definitely never have to remember this, but it's in this book, so I got to learn how to do a matrix this week.
Yeah. And it's less about like forcing fun. I think it's more about like the child kind of leading the way on the fun. Like, I don't really know how to describe it because I'm still figuring it out myself.
Sure.
But I think about it like for us, like when we pull out like flashcards, if I try to, do it a certain way, like here's the rules, here's how we play this game with these cards. If Luna has another idea in mind that in her is what is enchanting this stack of cards, when I squash that and say, no, we have to play it this way, I've just taken away the enchantment. And so it's
a chore.
Now it's a chore. So this is like this fight with homeschool. It's like, okay, yeah, you're making it fun, but you're also like letting the child decide what is fun. What is enchanting about this? It's not the fact that we do it this way for memory, but it's that we act it out and learn how to spell it, or whatever, through acting it out. I don't know, just to give a...
Yeah, no, that was perfect.
It was just funny. I don't know, just
like
enchantment.
That. Yeah, absolutely.
It made me think a lot about homeschool as we were rereading this.
Yeah. No, habits of play are supposed to be a part of a Christian household because they echo the kingdom that's coming. In the same way, in the last episode, we talked about the fact that work will be a part of recreated heaven and earth. Play is also going to be a part of recreated heaven and earth, and so as we're practicing it, we're practicing what it's going to be like to be in God's new creation when it comes. And so he kind of talks about 2 or is it 3 ways? Let me just scan my notes real quick to remember.
It's 3, I think,
3 ways to kind of habitually help them practice play.
Yeah. We want to read all 3 of them or just go through them?
Oh, we can go through them.
Okay.
You look like you had a thought, so I was pausing.
Well, yeah, I was about to say all 3 of them, but I didn't want to, like...
It doesn't matter. If you want to, you can.
Okay, well, the first one is habitually read imaginative stories to them.
Ooh, yes. Our world has a way of dulling our imagination. I mean, whether it's school or just day-to-day life, or honestly, a lot of the TV that is popular right now. Like, if you think about most of your popular movies and TV shows, they're dark and your heroes are pretty gray. Like, even... They don't even make lesser of 2 evil choices sometimes. Sometimes they just make wrong choices, maybe with sort of good motives, but not always. And so we take the joy and brightness out of life with a lot of that. And so it dulls us to just accept that there's less than what God's kingdom would bring to the world. It's less than what God is trying to build up in the world through what he showed in Jesus and what he's doing in his church. So when we practice habitually reading stories that create imagination, we're training and exercising our imagination. And really that's just as important as training and exercising our bodies and our minds. Like Scripture talks about doing both of those, and it arguably doesn't really talk about imagination. But when you read the Psalms, when you read poetry, when you read the prophets, like there's a lot of imagination going on in those, that if you don't have much of an imagination and understanding of how to read things with a broader than just a literal reading of it, like you're going to miss out on what's going on below the surface.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think the Bible tells all the stories, obviously, of what's going on behind the scenes, of the kids running around telling each other the latest, like, scary story or fun story they just heard.
You talking about in Bible times, those kids running? Gotcha,
yeah. So, like, we tell stories, and we tell stories that are very imaginative. They're fantastical. They're fictional. They're all kinds of things, and that's fun and that's exciting, and that brings a lot of like joy to the reader or the hearer. And stories have been told through time.
Yes.
And so now, obviously, reading books is what we do, and
there's something different about reading a book versus watching something, because when you're watching, like, you're being shown what to think, where you read, like, you have to picture these things, and the way you picture it will be different than the way somebody else does. Like, think of a popular series like Harry Potter. At this point, like, it's hard to read the books if you've ever seen the movies
and not think of Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah, absolutely. Daniel Radcliffe is Harry Potter.
Emma Watson and Rupert Grint.
Like, as they describe things, like, anytime scenes are going on in those books that aren't in the movies, you have to stretch a little bit and go, oh, what did that look like in the movie? Oh, it wasn't in the movie. What would that have looked like?
And like this person, this character that they never showed in the movie or whatever.
And so, it just stretches us a lot further when we're reading versus watching.
Well, I mean, that's reading The Magician's Nephew.
Yep.
That's been a lot of imaginative reading, because, I mean, there's a whole world. And like the toffee tree we were reading about today, I was trying to imagine that.
A toffee tree?
A toffee tree.
It's been a while since I read this book.
So smart, Diggory. He remembered that if you plant something, it will grow. And so they only had toffee to eat. And so he planted the last piece of toffee. And by the next morning, they had a toffee tree.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I do not remember that at all.
Yeah, so anyway, it's just like the imagination of the world, like, from that book has been really fun. It's really stretching my own imagination. But so like you're saying, like it's like a muscle that has to be stretched and exercised and trained.
Oh yeah, the people who tell me they can't read, like I can't read books and stuff, like there's a level of maybe there is something that just kind of makes it difficult to read. Like, even think about your brother, the optometrist, who found out when he's in optometry school as like a 20-year-old that it turns out his eye does a weird thing when he's reading, and so it makes it difficult for him to focus and read for long periods of time because of that. So there's definitely people in categories like that,
right?
But
I think it's an attention span thing.
For most people, it's just like I don't practice doing this,
right? Well, you think about like delayed gratification. Like, reading is very much on the more delayed side than screens, TVs, that sort of thing. And so when you're reading, it's really exciting in the moment for sure, and then you're like waiting to get to the next page. But that's an attention span thing where you have to really stretch that muscle to wait, to wait for the next page and wait, just like waiting for the next episode, of course, when they leave you on a cliffhanger. But that rarely happens anymore because you can just watch them all at one time.
Yeah.
But in a book, you really are stretched that muscle is stretched to be patient and to wait and to anticipate the next word, the next page, the next chapter. And then sometimes you have to shut it and come back to it later when you get a chance. So I think part of it's just an attention span thing, like just in our current world, like it's hard to, you're not stretching that muscle as often.
Yeah.
Just because of the way our things work. Like, I mean, you can literally order a pizza and go pick it up in 15 to 20 minutes like we did tonight from your phone, versus packing the whole family up, going to a restaurant, sitting down, pulling out a paper menu, looking at the menu, ordering a pizza, and waiting for it in the restaurant, which is still a thing, obviously.
Yeah.
But, like, that takes so much more time and patience. And so in our quick world today, we're just not as like, that muscle is just not stretched as much. I didn't mean to like get off on that.
No,
But
that's fine.
so we need these big imaginations
Yeah.
to be able to handle the big visions of the Bible, the big pictures, the big, all the things that the Bible tells us about.
Yeah. And, even when we're reading these series, like take a Harry Potter, for instance, and some people have strong feelings, or at least used to, about Harry Potter, whatever, like even Harry Potter has some underlying things going on in it that still teaches good things to us, to our kids. Like, I mean, one, there's just the power of friendship and community. Like, that's arguably the biggest difference that Daniel Radcliffe, aka Harry Potter, has between himself and Voldemort is just the ability to have friends around him. I mean, Voldemort has people who come around him, but none of them actually want to be around him or trust him or anything.
And he has, like, Harry Potter has love, whereas Voldemort does not.
Yeah.
The Sacrifice.
Yep, that was where I was going next.
Spoilers for Harry Potter.
It's an old series. It's
but the sacrifice of the hero being very representative of what Jesus did for us. The sacrifices that you make for your loved ones. Mm-hmm. I mean, his mother, Lily, literally stood in the way of a death curse, and that's what saved his life.
Yep.
And then in the very end, he sends himself to the slaughter to die to save humanity, from Voldemort. And guess what? He came back to life. So if you haven't read Harry Potter, that is the story. That is the ending, but not comparing Harry Potter to Jesus. But even in our stories, our creative stories for people, I don't know J.K. Rowling's religious belief, but I'm pretty sure she's not like... Yeah. She might have some sort of Catholic or Christian background, and that's where some of that imagination came from. But she was a reader herself, and over time we see these stories repeating because in us is the story of
we're all just trying to capture even a semblance of the greatest story ever told in Jesus. There was an author who riffed on that for a while, but I cannot remember who that was now. It's a book I read somewhere a year or two ago.
Yeah.
But just talking about the fact that every story is just a knockoff of trying to tell the story that God is telling. Yeah. And so we latch on to little bitty pieces of it.
Even the rocks will cry out.
And yet, so even our most secular stories, they've still got shadows of the one true story in them, the one that God is telling. And ultimately, he says a capacity for fiction is just as important as knowledge of history. Like the desire to read fiction and like sit in that and just kind of process through it and let it do its work of exercising our imagination. It's just as important as being able to know history. And, they say those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it, and mostly it's failures. So if it's just that important, like, that's a pretty bold and big statement, but I can get on board with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Often there can be more truth. I love this line. He said, often there can be more truth in good fiction and good poetry than there is on the news.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, our news is such
often, all the time.
Right. Our news is so fictionalized at this point. Like, literally, your two biggest news outlets, CNN and Fox News, or at least visual news outlets, the two of them have both in fairly recent legal cases claimed that their expansion of the truth, as we'll call it, was actually just entertainment. It wasn't news.
Wow.
So, like, they even recognize they are not telling you 100% fact. They're bending it to tell good stories.
Yeah, there's a lot of that on Facebook now too. Like, you'll see the title of like an article and it's like clickbait or whatever. You're like, oh wow, really? So you sit there and you watch the video, or you like go down to the comments and there's like a link to an article, which I never click on them because I just like to read the comments, because
Right.
people will be like, here's the summary. But it's such a misleading clickbait
always.
title, and it's like, that's not actually what happened.
Yep. Actually listened to a podcast not too long ago with one of the original BuzzFeed creators, and she kind of talked about, well, one, she borderline apologized to the world, and then secondly, she just kind of talked about how it went from, you know, slightly sensationalizing a statement to just like completely misleading people, and how it got out of hand.
BuzzFeed,
not
man.
just from BuzzFeed, but how everyone else latched on to it. It
Yeah.
got out of hand.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry,
Yeah.
we're
So
rabbit trailing.
more truth in good fiction
Yes.
and poetry than in the news. But yeah, because history repeats itself, and fiction is a depiction or reflection of history in some ways. And so yeah, you can read poetry and fiction and honestly be reading history and getting truth from that.
Yeah.
That's an inception. That's what it feels like.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what the Chronicles of Narnia is it's C.S. Lewis telling a different but same story of God and what he's doing in the world, basically.
Yeah.
So we help our kids learn how to play and have imagination by reading them good, imaginative stories.
Yes, and just not to elaborate here, but what you're reading them.
Oh, yeah, it matters.
It matters, but like storytelling versus just like books that just rhyme and say random little sentences, like storytelling.
Yes.
is what you're looking for, I think, here. Is what
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The second one, habitually accept their invitations to play. Oh man, the number of times you get asked in a day to play.
This sounds hard.
Yeah, regular play with children it's a sign that something in the household is going right. Okay, if we're playing with them, something's going right. One, because they want to play with us, but also because when we're playing, it can easily feel like there's something better to do. Like if we're playing with them all the time, there's something else we need to be accomplishing right now. And choosing to play with our kids is saying, I am choosing you over accomplishment. And again, it's one of those subtle things, but I think they notice that. I'm confident they recognize that we choose them over other things from when we accept their invitations. You know, we need a habit of saying yes because there is more to do. There's always going to be more that you can get involved with.
Yeah.
You know, their capacity to kind of get lost in playing is practicing for the kingdom, practicing how to live like we will in new creation.
Yeah.
But it's not just practice for them. It's also practice for us, because play is still natural to them. If the kingdom were to come right now, all the children are just like, yeah, I mean, obviously, it's all the adults that are going to be blown away by the amount of joy and play that it is.
Yeah.
And so in a lot of ways, they're helping us prepare for
They're
new
keeping
creation.
us grounded in play, bringing us back down to earth.
Yeah. But saying yes to their invitation. There is a caveat to it. And so I think we're pretty good representations of the two caveats, where if you're someone who works away from the home and your kids are off at school, or you're just not there with them, you have to adopt a habit of saying yes and being all in with your home as much as you can be within reason, obviously. But like, there needs to be a regular habit of, I get home and in this window of time, I'm saying yes. Whatever you guys want to do, whatever play, I'm going to do my best to say yes and be all in. Where for somebody who's at home all the time, like you, you actually have to denote, okay, we're here, we're together all the time, but this is the window of time where I am saying yes to play, or in these sorts of circumstances, I will say yes to play. But you also have to set the ground rules of, in these times or in these circumstances, I'm going to say no, and I'm going to send you to play on your own. And we'll get into on your own in a bit. But
I was thinking about that because how I've like scheduled out sort of a rhythm for the day. Not scheduled, but whatever, like lined out a rhythm for the day. I was like, oh, I guess I could make sure that I'm allotting time to play. Because I say no to play a lot. Now, I'm here with them all the time, so I do play with them.
Yeah, you're here 24/7, and they are too.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I definitely say no a lot. And I feel like I don't naturally want to play. And I know this is a fairly normal thing because there's Instagram accounts about how to get you to, help you play with your kids more and better, and not feel like so much like a chore. And just like being silly, like it can be a hard thing, but then when you do it, it's actually really fun. Like getting out and jumping on the trampoline is always really fun, but like just the act of like getting out there and doing it can sometimes be hard. So it's like you just have to say yes and then go do it. I love the thought of like getting lost in play.
Yes.
I say I love the thought of that. That sounds like a hard one, getting lost in play, because that means that I have to forget about what there is else to do or what we need to be doing. Yeah. Like that's why I love about homeschool groups. Like we really do kind of get lost in play.
Yeah,
when
absolutely.
We're out at the nature park today. Like that was wonderful.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why typically Tuesdays Ezra's off at his MMO thing, and so I try my best to just pick him up and stay home and work from home as long as I can so that y'all can stay there and, as you said, get lost in play there, because that's an opportunity for you to do that alongside her. Luna's playing all day unless she feels like school is work.
And you can, and you can see the moms that are like just kind of sitting back, the ones who have more older kids, if they can really do that. But then you see the moms that are like all up in the play with their kids, like even come dressed, ready to play. Yeah. To get in the water or get in the mud and that sort of thing. And it is nice. It is fun. So it's good to have that time. It really does feel good when you enter into it. But I say no to play a lot because I'm with them a lot. And that's
as
okay.
You should.
And you cannot and should not spend all your time playing with your kids, because you also have to send them off. To play and to be bored and to figure out and to have their own imagination. But he said the two questions he gets asked the most from his kids are to play or to pretend. And I was like, yes.
Or as Luna would say it for the longest time, and she no longer does, and it hurts my heart. Pretending that you fill in the blank. Pretending. It was always so cute. Yes. But as they get older, play will obviously kind of look different, but that doesn't mean it has to lose its wonder. Like that's the thing, is we're trying to keep them enchanted and keep ourselves and them having imaginations and seeing the beauty and the magic of the world around us and the things we can think of. We don't want to lose that wonder of his creation and lose the sight of the fact that it's magnificent. It's full of all of these possibilities. And so we cultivate a space with older kids for them to be able to play and get into their own hobbies and activities that bring them joy. And some of that will be like organized extracurriculars that school or select whatever things do, but also we just need to make sure as they're trying to latch on to everything, because in a lot of ways, this goes back to limitations. Like, we need healthy limitations, and we will have to sometimes limit our kids in all the things they can be involved in that are very organized, so that they have space to just kind of be and live in moments a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole conversation there.
Well, it's like turning a sport into, for just using sport as an example, or music. It's turning it into a chore, or into work, when it was originally meant to be play. I mean, competition is great and healthy, that sort of thing. I think about piano for me. The first hymn festival I did, I almost hated it, but then it ended up enjoying the competition of it. Not competition, but competition with yourself, really. But it made it feel like a chore at that point.
Have to do and have to be.
Yeah, but still, again, not saying that was a bad thing to do. Like, it was still a good and healthy thing to do, because it challenged and motivated. But
if all of your hobbies and fun things become all of these weighted things, like, there's a level of that could just take the joy out of.
Yeah, it's just no longer play. It's work.
Doing a thing that you want to do.
As a kid.
Right. And so when we play, we're trying to focus on our kids and help them not feel the weight and the, gosh, I can't find the word I'm looking for with this, but the underside, the ugly side, the dullness that life can be sometimes.
Protecting their innocence.
Yeah, that's a good way to say that.
And I'll say this too, the author mentions this in the book, but like, your undivided attention, we talked about that a little bit last week. Your undivided attention when you're playing with your child is even more, like, it's more important than the actual time that you play with them. Because if you can give your child 10 minutes of undivided attention and play, then that actually fills their cup up more than you just like half-heartedly playing with them for 30 minutes. And again, like, this may look like you bringing them in to doing the dishes with you. It's your play. But you're still inviting them in, you're still doing it together, and maybe you make a game out of it, or you make it fun. We gamified cleaning the room, the playroom tonight, and that was kind of fun. It worked out. Of course, brownies were involved, and so just making it fun, because we really needed to clean this room. Yes, that's a chore, but we played through it, and that was good. That was a good moment. So say all that to say, like, undivided. So you'll see a lot of this, like your child psychologists or your experts in this area. They'll tell you, like, if you could give your kid 10 minutes of attention and connection, whether that's like playing with them on the floor or whatever it looks like depending on their age, conversation with a teenager, I don't know what that looks like, but without a device, that connects you to your child so deeply that it allows that connection to stay when you need to have a hard conversation or you need to correct and redirect. The connection is there, and it just really fills your kid's cup up. I'm not the expert to really explain that, but they will say across the board, like, if you give your kid 10 to 15 minutes without your phone or a TV or device being distracting, like even checking it, like put it down. That actually like fills that kid's cup up like so much, and it connects you so deeply to your child, so that they are tethered and they are connected to you. So instead of becoming disconnected, which is a sad thought.
Through this whole section, I kept thinking about a quote. I had to look it up to find it and find words for it. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Don't worry, Virginia. I know it's really long on there. But it's a G.K. Chesterton quote. I think it's from Orthodoxy or one of his books. Anyway, he's just kind of talking about the fact that kids are drawn to say, do it again, do it again, do it again. It's one I hear regularly from our kids. I even think about the game Cheeky Fox, which is not a real game for those of you who just tried to think, what is that? It's just something Luna made up one day, and she and I kind of were jumping on the trampoline, and we did a thing, and now literally every single time we get on the trampoline, we have to do it again.
Yep.
And it varies very little.
Yep.
To the point to where now Ezra gets on the trampoline and says, Daddy, play Cheeky Fox. He literally has no concept. He's not trying to play the thing at all. He just knows that's what Luna says when we get on the trampoline, because we want to do it again. And so kids, they naturally say do it again, but for grown-ups, we're not strong enough to exult in the monotony.
Wow.
We actually don't have the power to do it. But perhaps God is strong enough to exult in monotony. It's possible that God says every morning, do it again to the sun, and every evening, do it again to the moon. It may not be automatic necessity that makes all the daisies alike. It may be that God makes every daisy separately, but has never gotten tired of making them. It may be that he has the eternal appetite of infancy, for we have sinned and grown old, and our Father is younger than we are.
Oh my gosh, that makes me want to cry.
Yep. No, and so in play, we are leaning in and learning from our kids how to exult, how to glory, how to enjoy the monotony of doing it again with our imagination.
Versus chasing the desires of our flesh that want more, different, faster, more satisfying, quicker gratification.
Yep.
Instead, it's just like,
man, let me just enjoy the beauty of this thing again. Yeah. It's good.
That's good. You should have read the whole thing. You just about did.
I mean, basically did by the time it was over.
Okay, next one.
We habitually send them out to play on their own, because like we said, we don't need to always say yes. They need to learn how to play on their own. And so there's no guilt about not always accepting the invite to play. That's why we try to make these expected times, rhythms, circumstances, whatever, that, hey, I say yes in these times, but also that means in the outside of these times, I'm probably going to say no, and you're going to get to go and play on your own.
This is like a perfect example of this. Spending some time with friends camping over the weekend, a family with a 12-year-old said, hey, finish that message and put your phone down. And the phone stayed wherever she put it for the remainder of the next 24 hours. And not quite 24 hours, but you know, for
the rest
a while.
Of the time. Yeah.
And she, even though she was the oldest one there and she didn't have a buddy, she was figuring out how to play and just be out in the world and alongside the adults, but also alongside the littles, and just getting comfortable with boredom.
Yep.
Because she, I think she wanted a friend with her. But for a teenager, for example, going out to play may look like, hey, this thing you're doing kind of on your own that's got you in your own little world here. Go out and do something outside of yourself.
Yeah.
Or outside of your phone or your, whatever.
Yeah, when they go and play on their own, they got to learn to deal with boredom. And I think this was a line I wrote in there. It's not one from the book, but he just kind of talking about the fact that dealing with boredom is a fight against our fallen imagination, our broken imagination. Because why are we bored? It's because we have the inability to imagine something right now, to imagine something fun that could be happening, something joy-filled, something bigger than this moment of whatever. We can't find the joy of the monotony and all the things. And so when they're going out on their own and having to deal with boredom or having to make connections with other people outside of their parents, that's helping fight against some of our broken nature.
Yeah.
And I think that's that's pretty cool. It's easy to accidentally teach our broken view of the world to our kids also.
Yeah.
Because we can accidentally teach them that life is all about accomplishment and nothing else matters.
Right.
But if we're sending them out and saying, hey, just go and play. Like, you don't have any chores to do right now. There's not schoolwork. You got to get up.
You don't have to turn it into a job.
Yeah, it's just like
a business.
Yeah. All of life doesn't have to be about accomplishing something.
Yeah.
I think that may be one of the things, while I enjoy a good video game and love them, I think that's one of the things it might be bad at doing, is it teaches us that we're always accomplishing, because a good game is constantly giving you a completion of this thing or a trophy for that or a little reward over here, because it keeps you feeling like you're accomplishing something, you're doing something. So your play is not just play, now it's also an accomplishment. Right. Look at all these things I achieved today. And you're not
coming up with anything there.
You're just following along the storyline. Even in the most open of games, you're still just playing within their boundaries. You're not exercising your imagination. Yeah. But yeah, if life is too busy for them to have unorganized downtime, we probably need to have a conversation about what needs to be given up.
Yeah.
And that's a hard conversation, because again, like, most of the things they're doing outside of the school's part of things, like all their extracurriculars, unless it's just something you force them into, they probably are doing it because they enjoy it.
Right.
They probably genuinely do want to be involved in all of these things. Yeah. But you as the parent then still have to lean in and go, hey, I am giving you limitations so that you can thrive. Because when we have a lack of limitations, that's where we really actually start to flounder, because we have all of these good options in front of us and all of these good things we could choose to be a part of. But because we have it all, we don't actually have the ability to do it all, and we just get burned out and don't have space for play, for just enjoying.
And that's like, I think I'm processing this in my brain right now. It's like the fault of our culture too.
Yes.
That you have to, think about let's call it Olympic culture. Like a sport or a talent, a skill, whatever, you have to go hard at it because you might become pro or you might get a scholarship on it, and then you might, go into your young adult years with that, whatever. And then once you can't do it anymore, you teach it, I guess. But, say all that to say, like, it's always like accomplishment, when it's like you're taking away, like, the play of the sport, the play of the skill, of the music, of the instrument, whatever. And now it's just all about becoming the best, becoming first chair instrument, becoming, the top dancer.
Top dancer.
First string, pro level.
You can even make you can play video games, go to college on scholarships now.
Right. It's like we have, like, literally, like...
You took the joy out of my video games? What is happening right now?
Yeah, and I'm not saying that those are bad, but, like, that's the underlying message is, if you're not first, you're last.
Ricky Bobby.
And, like, you must be working hard at this so that it's your job.
Yep.
And it's no longer just play.
Yep. And that, again, is the difficult thing that we as parents, we have to choose. Like, am I going to let my kid flounder in some ways because they are living under the stress and anxiety of being able to do all the things? Or are we going to take... Sacrifice isn't quite the right word, but are we going to take the pain of their anger with us, of not letting them be a part of everything they want to be a part of right now, so that they can actually thrive in a better, healthy, more holistic way in the long run? And that's difficult.
That's hard. Yeah.
We can't default to the American rule of life. We've got to fight for better habits. And so
as Christians.
Yes.
As Christians, we have to go against the grain.
Yes. And it's a radical way to live, but we're fighting for things like imaginative reading. We're fighting for the ability to have long conversations, to reflect silently. How many kids know how to reflect silently? I barely know how to reflect silently. I try to constantly have some kind of noise going on. And to live in boredom, to spend time in nature without it being forced upon you, and to just interact and do things that are challenging because you just want to, not because you have to do this to be better. Yeah.
My brain right now is just like thinking about some other things, but like take off the watch or put the phone down and go for a run or a walk or whatever it is you do, play pickleball, whatever.
But don't count the steps and the calories burned.
Yeah. Like just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Just enjoy it for what it feels good.
Yeah. The one time I wore a smartwatch of sorts, I got over it quick. Like it's constant reminder of how many steps I had not taken, and at the end of the day, it was just one more stressful thing in my day. I got rid of that thing pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean that right there, we've made a production. Yeah, like, oh, if you can't close your rings, I think is the phrase for the Apple Watches, or if you don't meet your step goal, then.
Did you walk 10,000 steps today? Probably not. I probably didn't. But you know what? It's okay.
Yeah, that's in case anybody was wondering. I'm pretty sure that 10,000 steps came from a campaign of something that is completely unrelated to your health. So just hear me out. Walking is great. Lots of steps, wonderful. But there is nothing magical
10,000.
about 10,000.
Yeah.
Okay? There's nothing magical about that number.
Yep.
Move your body. Yes. Enjoy it. But get off the number 10,000 if that's making you stressed out, or if you feel like you can't go get in the bed without making laps around your house.
Oh, yep.
But anyways, and I've been there.
Yep.
I've done it. You've seen me.
Yep.
I know that some of those are competitive challenges though, because with the Fitbit watch, the reason why I did that was because I was
trying to beat somebody.
I was in a competition with somebody.
They gamify it. That's
what
it's called.
They gamified it, right? So, and again, like that's fun. That's fine. That's not like I'm not necessarily saying that's completely.
It's
unhealthy.
not wrong. Yeah.
But I'm coming all the way back to say like,
just be able to just be.
Do.
Yeah.
Just be. Just
have fun.
Yeah.
And teach your kids how to do that. It's ultimately where we're trying to get to this with this.
I think about the nature park today. It was such. I mean, I'm not like this is new for me too.
Yeah.
Like go to the homeschool group in the nature park. And the kids just play. Mm-hmm. There was no structured anything. And they just had the time of their life. I pulled out a watercolor palette and they swarmed me because they were grabbing all the rocks and the sticks and the leaves and they just started painting them. And then there was geese and turtles and we found a pile of bones. And like
And you let our daughter put them in her pocket.
Everybody was grabbing them. Everybody had a bone. Somebody had a rib. Somebody had an L7. Somebody had a C4. Like they had all.
I think we had a neck bone.
We had
part of
the spinal.
Okay.
And ribs, and there was teeth. The teeth were falling out of the jaw, and they were just picking them up.
To be clear, this was a dead animal, not a human. Yes. Just to be clear.
We weren't sure. Like, it had to be like a baby possum or something. Not baby, but like mid-size, mid-day. Why am I talking about this?
I don't know.
Because it was just beautiful how they played.
Yep.
And there was nobody was, I mean, some of us were looking at the time to make sure, but just like the kids weren't.
Yeah.
Kids were just having a good time.
Yep. No, we were created for work, but we were created to play too, because there's so much more to life than work. There is also play and there's rest. But before we get to rest, we're going to do something we haven't done on the podcast in ages, and we're going to take a quick ad break.
Woo.
All right, so we have talked about habits of playing because, man, ultimately part of new creation will be play. It'll be unfettered joy, as Justin Whitmel Early put it. And so there's work and there's play in new creation, but there's also rest. And he talks about practicing the habit of Sabbath. And man, this whole podcast in and of itself. So
yeah,
we're going to try not to
have talked on it before.
We absolutely have, and absolutely will again. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he talks about Sabbath, and I like his definition of it. It's good.
Yeah.
He calls it a whimsical rebellion against the idea that work is the only important thing in the world. Mm-hmm. Whimsical. How many times do you say whimsical in your month? Never.
I think whimsical comes across my vocabulary probably more often than it does yours.
Oh, I couldn't tell you the last time I said whimsical. It's a fun word. Yeah, it's joy.
Well, it's like a
Willy
it's like
Wonka-esque.
It's an aesthetic. So it's like, oh, that's whimsical.
Oh, that must be a girl aesthetic thing.
It's a girl thing.
Okay, yeah.
Anyways, let's carry on.
But yeah, I just like the idea of thinking about Sabbath in that way. Also appreciate John Mark Comer's kind of definition of, or defining of how to Sabbath, and it being stop, rest, delight in God's good creation, and then worship God.
That's good. Yeah.
And that's kind of the movement of Sabbath. Sabbath, in its essence, was originally a 24-hour period of not working in order to worship, and most often it would start at like sundown and run until sundown of the next day. And so your day of rest was designed to start with rest, because it's hard to rest until you've actually rested. Like, it's hard to enjoy the whimsical, delighting side of Sabbath if you're just tired.
Yeah.
And so I like that Sabbath is meant to start with just, man, slowing down, being done with the work week, and resting.
Yeah, I think one of the best ways we can learn about Sabbath through the Bible is when God even had the Israelites, or he told them to do this. They never made it to this point, but I think it's like the Sabbath year.
The year of Jubilee.
The year of Jubilee.
The seventh seven, or something like that.
It's like the 50th or 49th year or something like that.
It's technically, I think it's both.
Yeah. So it's the idea that you'll work for the years leading up to it, but on this year, the year of Jubilee, you are not supposed to plant a crop. You literally do nothing.
Yeah.
And it's to show that God has done the work and he is going to provide. And there is nothing that you need to do to earn life.
Yeah, so every Sabbath year, so every seventh year, you don't plant or things like that. You live off of.
Oh, that's right. It is every seventh year.
Yeah, so every seventh year, you don't plant. You live off just kind of what naturally grows and any that was stored up from the previous six. Yeah. In theory, there's debates of whether or not you would do a 49th and then a 50th year immediately following it. Yeah. Just think about the radicalness of 2 years of not planting and things like that.
Yeah.
And in that 50th year, the thing that made it the whole year of Jubilee is everything was meant to reset. Like, if your family went into debt and lost their ancestral lands, like, whoever purchased it is meant to return it to you. Like, everything was meant to reset to an Eden-like ideal, essentially. It was like, hey, everything is back. Like, all the past debts, everything done, gone, forgotten. It's like it never existed. We're going back to restart, aka we're going back to Eden.
And let me explain even nutritionally why that's important.
Ooh, yes, please.
Because our lands, and I'm not that agricultural, but our lands have nutrients. Our soil has nutrients in them. And when we are farming on land, whether it's with farm animals or crops, you are using up the nutrients of the land, and that rest that we get. There's a reason why, for example, my dad moves cows from one field to the next. It's so that the field that they were on can be replenished, the grass can regrow, so on and so forth. And like on a larger scale, if you take a whole year and you let the land rest, the nutrients are replenished in the soil, and there is like an understanding that today our soil is absolutely depleted and we're not getting near enough the amount of nutrients from our foods that grow from the ground that we used to, and that we are lacking in magnesium and et cetera, because of that. Because we don't let our land rest. We just farm it. I mean, to some degree, yes, we do the rotations and that sort of thing, but we've just come so far that like, we don't, and obviously we're not the Israelites, but like we don't do that.
Yeah. So there's good functional reasons to Sabbath.
Yeah.
Not just for the land, but also for us as humans. We just need rest, but we also Sabbath for theological reasons. I mean, for one, Sabbathing shows that we recognize that, man, even when we stop, even if there's more to do, the world will just keep spinning, believe it or not,
because it spins on God, not on us. Like God is the one who keeps the world going, not us.
And you know what, if you don't work today, like there are some things that won't get done, but I bet tomorrow still comes, and I bet most everything will still be okay. You may have to make up a thing or two here or there, but that's another part of Sabbath, is the preparation for it. Not only is it teaching us lots of things theologically, it's also teaching us that, man, we get to trust in God's good creation and in Jesus's finished work on our behalf. But also when it comes to Sabbathing, really you prepare for it. Jewish culture takes half days on Friday, and so they spend the latter half of Friday preparing for a day of not working. I love that B&H, one of the largest tech companies, tech selling companies, just under Amazon, it's a Jewish-owned company out of New York, and so literally their entire company shuts down at noon on Friday, and they don't reopen until Sunday morning because Saturday is the Sabbath and day of worship for them. And so they get a whole afternoon to prepare for it. And that's kind of necessary to take a day of doing, to stop. To be able to stop, you really got to prepare for that, because you got to get some things cleaned up. You got to maybe prep for some meals. You got to send those last couple of emails or text messages to let people know, like, hey, okay, I've got it to this point. The rest of it will have to wait until Monday or whatever day for you. And so you have to prepare to rest. And I think there's probably a lot of theological things in that too. Also just love that literally the first job, like Adam comes out and he's told he's going to cultivate the land and multiply and spread out, but then the very first thing God makes him do is rest. And it's Adam and Eve. He makes them rest. Like literally their first full day is just resting. They're made on day 6, and then it's nighttime, and nighttime starts the Sabbath, and they Sabbath through the next day. So the very first thing they do isn't work, it's rest. And did they need rest? Had they done anything? No, they weren't resting from work. They were resting so that they could work. They were. We work from a place of resting in God and trusting in Him. So it's so much more than just a day off. It's not just doing the fun things, because that is definitely part of it. We delight in His good creation. We do things we enjoy, but we also try to be with people that we love to be with, and we worship. That's the primary difference of Sabbath and a day off. Or as Eugene Peterson, he said it so I can say it, a day off is just a bastard Sabbath, as he liked to call it. And he said it so I can too.
So cool.
I was just being funny. Anyway, it's that worship element that makes it so much different from just a day off. Many more things to say about it, trying to be mindful that we have, and we'll talk about it more again. And there's one more thing, and it was really a curveball, the end of the chapter, that I wasn't expecting for a chapter on play. He brings up implicit memory. And so give me a definition of implicit memory, Virginia.
Like implicit memory is like things you remember unconsciously.
Yeah.
You don't remember like a specific action or event. It's just like a nostalgia kind of feeling. It's a memory feeling.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I like to think of it. Explicit memory is like the opposite, where you remember this person said this and this happened.
Yeah, you kind of picture a scene in your mind with explicit, and implicit is kind of you're in your childhood home and you feel a certain way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he talks about implicit memory, that in the story of God, our children were made for good work. They were made for good play and good rest, which means we need habits to form them into who they were meant to be. And ultimately, as we're doing these habits of work, as we're doing these habits of play and of rest, we're building things that they'll remember unconsciously below the surface, and be able to carry that into their future. He also talked about the fact that we imagine the future based on variations of what our past was.
Yeah.
And I just like what our kids will imagine the future of work, the future of play, and the future of rest will be based on what they're living out memory. Now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so ultimately, through work, through rest, and through play, we're helping our family imagine the future in ways it should be. We're planting seeds of God's kingdom into their childhood, and God's faithful to grow those in the future.
Yeah.
And so we help our kids learn to play so that they can have glimpses of what recreation will be, and so that they fight against our culture of working hard and accomplishing constantly.
Yeah.
So let me give us our reminder of grace. God's love inspires our action, but our actions do not inspire God's love. Our family habits will not change God's love for us, but God's love for us should change our family habits. All right. Tell me a playful recipe.
A playful recipe?
I was just kidding about playful. I've been saying theme words the last couple of times, and you've yet to have pre-planned my theme words. So
I don't plan that far ahead.
You don't. And that's part of why we need quick and easy recipes. Give me one. Go.
Fairy bread would have been a playful one.
It would have been. Gosh, I did that a week too early.
Yeah. Okay, so I love chicken spaghetti, which is cheesy chicken and spaghetti, basically.
Yes, and it's delicious.
And it's always been a favorite. But you can make it really easy in the Instant Pot. So, there's this recipe I found one time that basically gets it done with it's more than 5 minutes. The cook time is the pressure cook time is 5 minutes, but it takes longer than 5 minutes.
Because you have to prep it.
Well, because you have to prep it, but
and it has to build pressure,
But it has to build pressure, so the building pressure part is the part that takes the longest. And Instant Pots can be a little tricky. Mine hasn't always been the best. It does the burn signal a little too much, but regardless, Instant Pots can still be very convenient. So, essentially, you just get your spaghetti, pasta, and chicken tenders, chopped onion. You can use, some people like rotel in their chicken spaghetti, or you can do just chopped, diced real small red bell peppers. I think I actually do prefer the bell peppers, but if you want it to have a little Mexican kick.
I was going to say, because our kids would prefer it that way. I would like more rotel, but
do the rotel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also eat salsa with everything.
Yeah, right. So either of those work. And you basically just pile it all in there and make sure you have your broth or your water for your spaghetti, and the exact measurements on everything I don't have. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's fine.
But
you just pour some in there. If it feels like too much, take some out.
Right. So you cook that for 5 minutes, pressure cook, and it will cook the chicken. So once you open it, once the pressure has been released for a little bit, you open it, you shred up the chicken or dice up the chicken, put it back in. This is when you add the cheese. And I think it calls for like 4 ounces of cream cheese and then like a cup or so of shredded cheddar
3
cheese.
cups of shredded cheese. Got it.
I say what it calls for. I just like to eyeball it and put a lot of cheese
Whole
in there.
bag.
So 1 to 2 cups of shredded cheese. But like it's that easy, and you mix it all together, and it makes a ton. So I think you use like the whole pound of spaghetti. So the water or the broth would have to be like 2 to 4 cups. I can't remember exactly what it is, but regardless, easiest way to make chicken spaghetti, and it makes a ton of it. And you literally just dump it all in there and let it cook, and then eat it when it's ready.
I love it.
Yeah, we'll have to link that or something.
Yes. Yeah, we'll catch up on some of these recipes soon.
Yeah, eventually. I'm going to get to that. Sorry.
Eventually. Speaking of things we're going to get to eventually, guess what I completed this week?
What?
I keep wanting to call them members because I say covenant members at church a lot. Our monthly supporters, part of the website. It's a super secretive, password protected part of our website that only our monthly supporters have access to, on which there are... Currently it's 1, but there will be future even more bonus episodes. There's the ability to ask questions that we'll answer on an episode, and also suggest topics that we could potentially cover in one level or another. As
we only listen to the paid people.
Basically. No. We'll potentially consider other things, but they get priority, and they can ask questions that, within reason, we'll answer on the podcast.
Yeah.
I can't imagine many outside of reason that our monthly supporters are going to ask anyway. But yeah, so with that in mind, here is what you can do for us. And I'm actually going to change this up just a little bit.
Yay.
So typically we have like the list of 4 couple of things we're going to do. I think what we'll do is each episode we're just going to highlight one of them, because despite the fact that communication is a major part of my job, and I literally know that people will only do one next step, and if you give them too many next steps, they'll do none of them. I have been giving people too many next steps every single episode, and instead we'll just highlight one each time. Cool. And since we're just talking about the monthly supporters, that's the one we can highlight on this episode. So while you're hanging out on bowlsoflife.com, because you're there regularly all the time, what you can do is become one of our monthly supporters, or you can also give a one-time gift, and we'll make sure to send some love your way as well. Haven't figured out exactly what that'll look like, but if you do that, I'll be forced to figure out exactly what that'll look like, so that might be for you. So yeah, consider becoming one of our supporters, because when you do that, it not only encourages us, it helps us prioritize this, and it makes sure that we're not having to make space for other things in our life that provides income and things like that, and instead can focus in a bit more on making sure the resources and podcasts and all the fun things of Bowls of Life are not only a passion project, but are always beneficial to your life and helping you make a journey out of this messy adventure of faith, family, and food.